Hi guys, welcome to my top 5 worst Master System games video. Now before we get started, of course this is only my top 5, this is my personal opinion. I'm sure you're going to disagree, or you might not think that the games I've picked are anywhere near as bad as other titles you've seen on the system, but if that's the case, stick it in the comments below, because I'm always interested to have a bit of discussion or argument back and forth, however it goes. Now I've picked what I think are some pretty terrible games. I mean, with the Master System in particular, I spent a good 18 months going after a full collection, got up to about 150, 160, I was well on my way there before I just stopped to move on to other things. But so I've good experience of the library. I've seen a lot of good stuff and a lot of bad stuff, I'm sad to say. So anyway, let's crack on. First up is number 5. This is a bit of a controversial one, I suppose, but it'll be Teddy Boy. Now this is a bit of an odd single screen scrolling up, down, left and right platformer stroke shoot 'em up. It's a very odd game with sort of dull but catchy music at the same time. It's very cartoony, it's nice, it's bright, it's colourful, but I think it was a budget game as well, because it was on one of the cards rather than a cartridge at first. But it's just not a very good game. A lot of people seem to rave about it and love it, but I could just never get into it. I bought it as a kid and I wasn't best pleased with it. It plays okay. It's very simple, and for the money at the time, for what you were getting, compared to say something like the NES at that time in its life, you should have been getting better titles than what they were able to throw out with that game. I mean, the shooting mechanics it just doesn't work. It's too easy to die. The only good thing about it, it's bright and it's colourful. What can I say? Out of all the games I've played, it's a bit of a Marmite task, but I just don't like it. I can't get on with it. I can't really explain why. I mean, even as a kid, it just used to wind me up. It was just one of them titles I played and I was like, oh god no, what's next? Anyway, moving on is a very good one. Number 4 is a good one. What am I saying? It's eSWAT, which is a conversion of, I think it's a port of either the Mega Drive game, or which is then ported from an arcade machine. It's a weird one because it's supposed to be a bit like RoboCop in a way, but you build your armor as you walk along, and in the Mega Drive game it's fantastic because you go along level by level, you get bits of extra armor, extra weapons, and it feels like an accomplishment, and it does look pretty good. It's not a fantastic game, but it's not half bad. It's a fun romp, and it's good enough to play. But the Master System game is just terrible. It's as typical, it's cut down, but it's boring. The collision detection's pretty poor. It's challenging, but only in the sense that it's too bloody difficult for its own good. You can't really get anywhere, and then when you do get somewhere, it never really changes. And then upgrading your character, it's just awful. I'm not bringing much to the discussion there, but it's one of them you've got to see to be believed. But it's a very poor port, and very deserved of being in the top 5. Anyway, moving on. This was a bit of a not a struggle to pick, because it was the first game that came to mind when I was trying to think back to all the bad ones I've played over the years, and it's Cyber Shinobi. I mean, the first Shinobi game is fantastic. Amazing music, it's a great platformer, the way you can jump up and down between levels, use close combat weapons, long range weapons, the bonus stages, all that sort of thing. It's a challenge, it's a great game. And then Cyber Shinobi, it's like it plays like 10 times. It's 10 times slower. The levels aren't very well designed. They don't do much with it. It's more of a futuristic style. It's like, oh well, we've done the present day with Shinobi, let's go into the future and make him a cyber one, and it just doesn't work. It's boring. It's bland, and it's so bloody slow. The weapons are awful. I haven't got. I'd say it's a tough one to go on about because it just sucks to a great degree. I mean, there's so many other good platformers out for the system, but the thing is, following in the shadow of the first Shinobi game, you've set a standard there. That's the standard you should be following, and to come up with something like this as a sequel, Sorry Sega, not a very good game. Anyway, moving on to number 2, and it's Vigilante. This was not a hard one to pick at all because I owned this back in the day, as well as picking up recently in my Master System collecting. And it's your typical like kung fu style side-scrolling beat 'em up, walk along, take on a couple of enemies, keep walking. Very, very similar to the Kung Fu arcade machine. I think it was an arcade game that was ported back across to multiple systems. I might be wrong there, but the Master System version, I mean, it's like a more simplistic looking version of Double Dragon in a way, but it's all on the same plane as you're scrolling across. But you know, the controls are awful. It's not very responsive. The enemies are not difficult, but they take too long to take down. So you spend a lot of time mashing and walking and mashing the buttons, and not much happens. And then you get to a boss fight, and then you have the same problem. It takes ages to get his health down, and it's not. The challenge comes from taking too long to play it, which sounds very, very odd, but it's very unimaginative compared to like the Kung Fu it's based on, which is like snappy and fast with great music, you know, and that character walks across, and I've got the tune in the back of my mind, I'm dum 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 dum, you know, I'll just playing away. But this one, nothing's memorable about it. There are other versions on other consoles, of course. I believe it's an arcade, but other places it's quite a good game. But the Master System one, why have I put it above the others? Because for some reason it's always stood out in my mind as Vigilante is like a big Sega title, one of the early big Sega titles, but they just did nothing with it, and it's a shame because it's a missed opportunity. Because with a bit of tweaking here and there, it could have been a lot of fun, but it just doesn't work out. So which leads on to number 1. Again, I played a lot of poor games for the Master System, but the one that always stands out in my mind, I mean, it's barely a game. And it's F16 Fighting Falcon. And you've got to keep in mind that the Master System's control pad has got 2 buttons and a directional bit. You know, there's nothing else. There's no start select or anything. And they basically put, I don't know, it's a flight simulator. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's incredibly basic. It's a single background colour, grid lines over it and stuff, and then all the numbers. It's supposed to look like a very technical flying, like inside a plane and a cockpit and stuff, but it's just awful. It's just, I mean, I would be so annoyed if I'd have got this as a kid because there's just nothing to it. It's not a fun game. It's slow. The scrolling's awful. Nothing really happens. I don't know, out of all the bad games I've played, it just stands out as being very bland and very boring. It's supposed to, is it a flight simulator or a shooter? Because in some way it sort of reminds you of Afterburner, but it's nowhere near that, or it's not that style of a shooter, and it's just a very, very poor quality. In fact, every time I play it I kept thinking this should not have been a game. If anything, it should be a screensaver. So what does that say? Yeah. Anyway, guys, I think I've been through a good choice there. There is a lot of bad games, but those are the ones that have really stuck out in my mind of being very, very poor, especially with the last one. But yeah, as always, thanks for watching. Please rate, comment and subscribe below.